Welcome to the Digital Teacher Leader webinar for November. Today's topic comes from the ISTE Standards for Coaches, titled Collaborator. So our monthly themes come from our Digital Teacher Leader monthly webinars from the ISTE Standards for Coaches. And as you see, for November 1st, it's Collaborator. Today will be Larisa and Tracy. December 6th is our next one coming up, and that will be a special topic that we are fleshing out currently. From the Digital Teaching and Learning team, take a quick look at our team and who you can call on for anything you need. Announcements for this month. Please remember to submit your monthly reports for tech training. You can find those forms on the Digital Teacher Leader Canvas page. I will put that into the chat as well. If you are not added to the Digital Teacher Leader Canvas course, please contact your Digital Teacher Leader specialist to be added. There is a Digital Teacher Leader annual survey that will go out today. Please fill that out as soon as possible. And our next webinar is December 6th. So today, sorry, forgot about the EdTech endorsement. How can we forget about that? Sorry, Deanna and Kira. Please apply today for that. Classes start in January. So today's session, like we talked about, is all about collaboration. And from the best collaborators, are imitators, right? So I am going to talk about under pressure and using the coaching standard collaboration and how much pressure us coaches can be under to get it right and to really collaborate, and ways that we can kind of get around that. Tracy, I'm going to turn it over to you for a minute for, all right, stop, collaborate, and listen. She's going to talk to us about her collaboration topic. Go ahead, Tracy.
I'm just going to be talking about how we can collaborate with one another and make it genuine.
Hello, Tracy.
Can you hear me?
Has Tracy disappeared?
Yeah, we can't see you, Tracy.
Can you?
There you are.
Oh,
hi, you're back, but you're muted. Can you please unmute and tell us what you're going to talk about today?
I'm not muted.
I can hear her.
Okay. Larisa can't hear me?
Still can't hear you, Tracy.
I'm going to type it in the chat.
Larisa, can you hear anyone else?
I am no longer hearing Jared either.
Oh no.
Can everybody hear me but not?
Yeah, I can hear you,
Okay.
and I can hear Tracy.
Oh, you can?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
so
I
it's
can hear
me.
you and Tracy.
This is awesome. That's my problem. Since this is great. Okay. I'm going to start sharing this again and see if I can get back online. Can you hear me again? I can hear both. Mary can. Thank you, Mary.
I think you lost being able to hear when you played Ice Baby.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I will stop playing that music right now.
Stop, collaborate, and listen.
Okay, so thank you so much for joining us. Tracy's Zoom account is in the chat, and I will re-add that in case anybody's joining us now. If you would like to join Tracy, please go ahead and join her. And she's got that in the chat. Can you guys all see it? Mary, can you see that her chat still? Okay, perfect. The rest of you, we'll see you here. I'll give you all a minute. So collaborating with a teacher takes trust from one another, respect with each other professionally, and a commitment to keeping your partnership agreements, and clearly define the work you do together. Yes, you're recording. So the 6 strategies to build coaching relationships with all teachers. 1 is you want to make or find that personal connection. 2, validate and respect their concerns. Be available, be visible. Find their superpower and appreciate it. Respect their style and expertise, and connect with a friend or a trusted colleague. So Make or find a personal connection. So you need to look for opportunities for personal connections. Now, this doesn't have to do necessarily anything to do with school. Do you both like camping or hiking or ice cream? Whatever it is, find a personal connection. So last week, I made a personal connection with the secretary at the district office. She has a dog named Harley that they had to put down last week after 13 years. I feel connected to her now, as if I could call on her for anything. So obviously, how did I get started with that conversation? It became, well, my husband sent me a bouquet of flowers telling me that he was sorry for something he'd done. It ended up over the district office, and she interpreted that as losing a dog. Now, it kind of did look like a puppy dog face in a sea of carnations. I don't know. She thought I lost a dog, but it made that connection. And now I honestly feel like I could call up Miss Secretary with a dog named Harley and connect with her. So, what are ways that you've made or found a personal connection? Melanie?
There, finally. I have made personal connections with a lot of the people on my faculty. Actually, one of the best ways has been because I got a puppy during COVID and I love her so much. I talk about her all the time. And anybody else who has a dog wants to talk about their dog. So we talk about that. I've made personal connections with people who have children the age of my children, or colleagues who are the age of my own children, just because I have that relationship with them. So lots of different ways.
Mary, what are some ways that you've made personal connections?
Well, in the mornings, it seems that I walk in with them and we're always constantly talking about what happened over the weekend, or who do we see, or what happened with the families and things like that. A lot of them are my age that I'm talking to. And so we all know about taking care of elderly parents, and we all have the dogs too. So I think a lot of us have the dog things that we can start with, and what happened with all of the caretaking abilities. So yeah.
That's awesome. That's great. Thank you for those suggestions. So the second way is to validate and respect their concerns. So these conversations might get a little heated. So it's critical to be aware of the emotions in that room as you're managing your own emotions. So you need to be sensitive to those of your colleagues who you're trying to coach. In this Coach Better podcast, there's a spotlight episode with James McDonald. He's the Senior VP of Education at GEMS Education. He talks about the impressive skill and value of coaches who can manage the emotions in the room, often called emotional intelligence. Now, in this little clip, he does refer to it as EQ. So when you hear EQ, he's referring to emotional intelligence.
I want to go back to the coaching skills that you think are so effective and useful in school leaders that you're seeing now. Can you tell us a little bit about, like, what specifically are you talking about when you're mentioning these skills that make effective leaders? I know you talked about building rapport and relationships and helping get everyone kind of going along the same path. Are there any specific examples you can point to, or specific skills that you think, like, this is the skill set that makes up an essential set of coaching skills for an effective leader today?
One thing we talk about is this vague sort of nebulous term, but EQ. Can you really be a good coach if you don't have a high degree of EQ? It's pretty hard, right? But you're really effective leaders, particularly in a school where it's all about relationships and all about people. You can see how someone with that natural EQ can amplify that through coaching and through some of the skills. So one turn of phrase that I'm always so impressed with is, maybe it's not just one turn of phrase, but it's the ability to acknowledge some of the emotions in the room and start there. And so I've noticed with some of our best trained coaches who are in leadership positions, they're in a difficult situation, and rather trying to go back and forth and possibly amplify something, they will start by acknowledging some of the emotions people are feeling and their perspectives on it. Basic stuff, right? But when you're in a situation that could be kind of intense, it could be rather hard. Maybe it's a parent that's quite emotional about something. By just pausing, taking a moment, acknowledging what the other person is feeling, asking for some clarification, So often you've reduced 50% of the tension in the room just through these little steps. And so it's not just one thing, it's that full package of being able to connect with people in the right way. The other thing that I would add, when we're talking about, say, moving to school or vision, having people that can connect with other individuals in a beneficial way, that whole idea of constructivism, that people construct their own knowledge. And what a coach is good at is not trying to put other thoughts in people's heads, but providing an architecture for them to develop their own thinking around the matter, to reframe something and just, within Vygotsky's zone of proximal development, a good coach will stretch somebody to think about something in a fresh way. And that can often be in situations where you wouldn't think it's necessarily a coaching conversation, like when a parent's coming in because they're upset. Their child's been disciplined in a certain way. But the next thing you know, through a highly skilled coach, you've worked with that parent in a way that's not going to be adversarial, but you're working alongside them. So it's a bit of a roundabout answer, but I think there's so many ways in which these skills can manifest themselves. It's really hard to just summarize in one or two because it's a package. It's about being able to take a situation and modify your approach based upon that situation and do it in a way that works for that person on the other side of the table and not just on your own perspective. You really are putting yourself in their shoes. Does that make sense?
So on that Coach Better web podcast, it is a wealth of knowledge and opportunities to learn. I encourage you to go and look out for the Coach Better podcast.
So Larissa, I was going to make a comment just about that topic today. Especially I think for digital coaches, right? Like I love what you've set up at the top. So many of the people that we work with, they feel a little unsure of themselves when it comes to technology. So helping them feel heard, like, and understanding and showing that empathy. Such a big deal for people who are trying to stretch themselves and do things they haven't done before.
Yeah, I learned this a lot when I was working with the young teachers because they come in super energized and they're super excited. And then everything is overwhelming to them, school and just everything that we demand for teachers. And then all of a sudden they don't feel there's something resistant about listening to us because they don't feel like they're heard because they are caught. I'm sure experienced teachers feel the exact same way at times. And so we need to make sure that we hear them and we seek out their opinion and validate that. Thank you, Jared. The next topic or the next step would be to be available and be visible. So eat with them, hang out with them in the faculty lounge, schedule classroom walkthroughs when teachers are actually available for a chat. Do pop-in observations because we're not here as evaluators. And you guys are not here to evaluate these teachers, but you can't help them if you're not around and you're not available. So the key here is to see the teachers and be seen by teachers, be a part of their environment rather than forcing them. So in essence, you are doing what they need rather than what you think they need. So what are ways that you have made yourself visible? Hi, Cammie. Thanks for joining us. And Joanne, Cammie, what's a way that you've made yourself visible in your in South Jordan?
I think just kind of walking the halls, like you said, just kind of informal visits, like their kids are at recess. So I'm like, hey, how's it going today? Or, just chatting, like, how's your weekend? Just kind of basic interactions, it's nothing major, but just being present, being around. Well, what's funny is I was going to eat in the lunchroom, and I don't want to put Amy on the spot or anything, but then she specifically mentioned like not to sit in there and eat. So I was like, oh, okay. So now I guess I feel a little bit torn because you know what I mean? But I think it would be good to just kind of sit and talk about just, their lives and get to know them on a more personal level. I really like that quote of what you said of just not forcing them to be a part of our schedule, but be part of theirs. So I don't know what are your thoughts about the lunch thing really? Because it was on.
I know. No, I honestly, this is where Amy and I differ a little bit. Hey, Melanie, I was in your school for a couple of years. Did you feel like I was doing absolutely nothing because I hung out in the faculty lounge with you to eat?
Absolutely not. And in fact, that's something I do on a regular basis. I may spend an hour and a half in the lunchroom. I'm not eating the whole time. I'm having conversations with teachers. They see that I'm there and they'll come and say, hey, I want to ask you this question. So if I kind of hang out in there during their lunchtime, they have the opportunity to kind of come up and pop in and ask me questions because I'm there and available for them. So I found that actually to be really useful for me.
I agree because I'm in there a lot too. And it's a great way to get to know the teachers on a personal level and you get to find out more about them. And you're right, you ask questions. And I'm like you, sometimes I'm in there longer than, you know, and I'm not eating the whole time or whatever, but it's because we're having meaningful conversations. So I totally agree with that.
Well, and everyone who I see here today have great relationships with their schools, and they've made the point where people want to come and find you. They search for you. So you're not this person, there's this enigma that's in some room in your office. You've made yourself very visible.
Yeah. Well, and I would say that a lot of you probably have had this experience where because you're visible, somebody says, oh, I'm so glad I see you. Here's a question that I've wanted to ask you. I'm glad that we ran into each other.
I would agree with you. So that is where I probably differ from Amy. And I know that Amy has said that, but in my personal experience, and as Melanie has said, and you guys have all attested to that it's not necessarily that you're just sitting there and you're laid back reading the newspaper. You're actively engaged, like Melanie was talking about, trying to actively be a part of their lives. Okay, so let's move on to the next category, is finding their superpower. So sometimes I feel like anxiety is my superpower. I wear it well. Oh, that was so cute. Why did that go away? Play.
If you had a superpower, what would it be?
Imagining all the ways it could all go wrong.
What?
You know, like no matter the situation, I'd be able to fall into an existential spiral and fixate on all the possible worst case scenarios.
How would that superpower be helpful?
Well, like if someone was robbing a bank, I'd come in and explain to them how stressful it would be to hide the money, the stress of being wanted for a crime, the paperwork required to change your identity. And by the time I was done, the robber would regret it.
You know what? Fair enough.
So, anyone else feel that their superpower might be some anxiety? But if anxiety is your superpower, work with it. If it's your colleague's superpower, work with that. Find what makes them super. So every teacher has something they are amazing at. It may not be something you prioritize, but that doesn't mean it's not important to them or to their students. You find that thing that this colleague does extremely well and let them know you noticed. If you have an opportunity and they would be receptive to it, you might even find a way of them sharing their amazing superpower with other teachers. So to demonstrate that, there are great things happening in every classroom, even if they aren't working with you yet. So if you think this teacher would benefit from some validation of their teaching expertise, and perhaps that could be one of the reasons they are reluctant to be coached, you can also use this as an opportunity to be a learner. Sometimes teachers are reluctant to be coached because they see you as an expert and they are intimidated. This is a chance to be vulnerable and ask for them to teach you something they are great at. If you demonstrate your willingness to be a learner, they might also be willing to do the same in their content area too. So I gained a lot of this with a teacher who I felt was a superpower at math, not my superpower. But I could inevitably get her to teach me something and teach my children, my students, I call children as we all do, teach my students a concept of math that I was failing at. It really gained me a lot of momentum, and she is a lifelong friend from it. So every teacher has something that they're amazing at. Do you have a superpower, Melanie?
I think that my colleagues think that I know everything, which is not true.
Don't?
I've actually been quoted as that. People will say, oh, ask Melanie, she knows everything. But I think really what I'm good at is finding answers for people. If I don't know, I will Google it. I will ask somebody else. I will send an email. And just being able to be that resource for people is something that's been really helpful for me.
Excellent. Hey, Mary, what is your superpower?
I think partly that I can approach about anybody and I'm not threatening to anybody. They all see me as just a really nice person and they don't worry about what I ask them or what I tell them. So I've also been told that I do everything. What don't I do? And I look at them and go, there's a lot of things I don't do. They just think I do everything. So
Joanne, you have people in your building. Who can you think up off the top of their head who has a superpower?
Oh, I have a teacher here that's fabulous teaching math. I mean, I can hear her from my office and I just love listening to her because she's just really good at what she does.
You also have that male teacher that is Chinese.
Oh yeah, Thomas. Yeah, he's
Emerson,
hold on.
Anderson, if you're in the building, please come to the office.
He
Emerson, please come to the office.
these announcements. He is American, but he's done a lot of work with in China and he has been amazing working with our Chinese teachers because he's American and grew up here. He knows the culture. He knows the how Americans, you know, especially kids, how they work. And so he is able to really kind of bridge that culture gap for the Chinese teachers and to help them acclimate better to our school.
Absolutely. He has been amazing with your school, particularly those teachers wanted a ton of my help last year. He's been the difference. They haven't needed me to come out nearly as much about Canvas. I'd like to say it was because I did an amazing job last year. No, I believe it's probably him with his superpower. So the next thing we're going to talk about is respecting their style and their expertise. So this is hard because sometimes they do it different than you. So this can be a tough one. Sometimes there are teachers that are already doing pretty much exactly what you would coach them on, but they're still reluctant to work with you. It can be hard to tell why they wouldn't want to work with you because you might feel you already see eye to eye, but there could be other reasons that are just not apparent to you. So in this case, you might want to simply recognize and respect their style and their wishes to just get on with it. Not everyone wants to be in the spotlight and not everyone wants to push every boundary. If they're already making things happen in their classroom and they don't want to do that in collaboration with a coach, that might be okay. So in essence, try not to mess with what's already working. By giving them some distance and continuing to work with others, you might be able to build a curiosity about the value of working with you and allow them to come to you instead of you always pushing in to them. Has anybody had any experience with validating and respecting their style and expertise, and then they eventually come to you? Jared, do you have any expertise in this?
You know, I mean, I think it's the biggest thing about being a coach is being flexible, to be honest with you. Like you're saying, I mean, if I only see one way to do something, that just doesn't work. Like, especially there's so many different ways that you can use technology in your classroom that I'm just so excited when somebody's willing to try. And so if they come up with a different way than I would see to use it, I never try and shut them down. I always just say, oh, that's amazing. Like, you just showed me a different way than I would do that. But I just try and be really positive with people.
Tammy, you have been putting a big push to use technology around and in your classrooms, and recently held a big technology day, and you've got one coming up on Friday. So how do you feel that is being received? And is there a style or expertise that you appreciate from every one of them?
Well, let me say what I was thinking first. I think that sometimes it's not necessarily like a formal coaching cycle, or I'm going to come and observe you about this or that, but they feel comfortable coming and talking to me about a certain area in the curriculum or finding ideas for something that they're trying to teach, or how can I integrate social studies with language arts, so sometimes there have been conversations that is helping their teaching their style, or like delivering the instruction, of how they want to do that. So sometimes that's been, I've had teachers come to me in that way, you know what I mean? How it's different than what we might consider a formal like coaching cycle. But with technology, I think it it might help that I taught here, and so I've been on a couple of different teams, and so they're like, oh, Cammie's good at that, or she's kind of knows the technology there, and so they've come to me for different questions, or just knowing that like I can get them into that program when they're like stressed out or they need it right now, and it's not working right. So that's been helpful. But I think just feeling comfortable, it's hard, their time is precious. So sometimes our meetings we haven't had as much as we'd hope to, but our principal has been really great about seeing the importance of technology and how to utilize it in the classroom. And so this Friday, as part of the PD day, we're having half-hour breakout sessions. And so different teachers are gonna be the teachers to highlight different areas of technology and how they can be used in the classroom, and really just give teachers time to either build something, or they can go to all the different classes that are being offered. So it's going to be built into part of our day on Friday. So it's good to have that support as well from our admin, that it's kind of being a big deal this Friday. So that's fun. We'll see how it goes. I know that teachers I guess we'll see how they feel about it. We did a survey. So like most surveys, you get, I don't know, maybe half or a little more than half respond. So we're just building it off of that response of what teachers said that they'd be interested in doing, and then asking those that we know are good in certain areas.
Excellent. That's definitely respecting their expertise and their style, and allowing them to teach. Always super helpful. It gets the
Well,
vibe.
and I was going to say, I love that idea for all of us in the room for Tech Tuesdays, right? Like sometimes the thing that the teachers all want isn't something that's one of your strengths, but it is a strength of somebody else in the building.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yes. And I love what Cammie said about it. It's not always necessarily you go in for a coaching cycle, particularly with them, but there's something comes out of it. So I was working with a teacher and she asked about management. Well, that was an excellent opportunity for me to use an engagement tool that was actually ended up being a technology engagement tool, but because the kids were just not engaged. And so I showed her that digital tool and the engagement rose, management decreased. So when Cammie mentions it's not always something particular, but they're just asking you questions, or Melanie said, hey, they asked me questions in the lunchroom. Sometimes they're saying, hey, I'm struggling with management right now. And that gives you a good opportunity to throw in some digital or an engagement tool. So the final skill or tip would be to connect with a friend or a trusted colleague. So if you've tried like everything else and you just cannot break in, this is my favorite strategic suggestion on this list. So if you've tried everything else and nothing has worked, this is my next step. Every teacher at the school has at least one friend or a trusted colleague. So instead of trying to work directly with that resistant teacher, find their friend or colleague that you know can open the door for you and work with them. Don't let them know that you're doing this to gain access to their friend, because likely both colleagues will benefit from your coaching. Just start building the relationship. Build the relationship with that trusted friend. So you're not doing this covert. You honestly want to know more about that colleague and that friend. And that way, the goal here is to build the trust via networking. It's likely that you will always struggle to work with the resistant teacher in this scenario. They are not going to change overnight, but you also might be able to influence their classroom practice through a friend. Of course, you can extrapolate this out through layers of friends if you're really struggling, but this is a long-term strategy, and it really only works if you really know the interpersonal relationships of your teachers and staff. So what Cammie was just saying, that does help, that she has worked there and on different teams, it is completely the key. You have to kind of have that relationship working within your school and your teams, and they have to trust you as well to be able to work with a trusted colleague and friend, or to get in on their team and make suggestions. So when you're working digitally with these teachers and you're trying to get them to do a digital tool in their classroom strategy, they're going to be a little resistant because that's not going to be their expertise. And so you becoming they might not trust you, but they're going to trust their friend to tell them that they can do it. And you go around being their cheerleader, they are going to listen and believe their friend before you, unless you have that great relationship. But so as we wrap up here, I just want to remind you that today we talked about the 6 strategies to building coaching relationships with all teachers. First, you want to make or find a personal connection. You want to validate and respect their concerns, be available, be visible, find their superpower and appreciate it, respect their style and expertise, and connect with a friend or trusted colleague when all else fails. Thank you so much for joining us today on our Digital Teacher Leader webinar for November, and we look forward to seeing you in December.